When you think of America today, you think of the richest, most powerful country in history. But what if I told you that its rise to the top was basically a complete accident? That for the longest time, this was the land nobody even wanted.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to believe, right? But seriously, for over 100 years after Europeans first showed up, North America was pretty much ignored. The big global powers at the time, they had their eyes on much, much bigger prizes somewhere else.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How did this forgotten, useless territory become a global superpower? Well, it's a wild story, full of lucky breaks, huge ambitions, and some unbelievable twists. Let's get into it.
Okay, so our story starts not with a bang, but with, well, kind of a shrug. See, the first European explorers who came here were looking for one thing in particular, and North America just didn't have it. When Christopher Columbus sailed west, he was trying to find a shortcut to Asia for all those valuable spices. He didn't find it, but he did stumble upon the Caribbean, and he sold his royal backers on one thing, the promise of gold. And that obsession with finding precious metals, it basically set the strategy for the entire Spanish Empire. And this right here explains why Spain, the biggest power of the era, put all its energy into Central and South America. They sent a few crews up north, sure, but they didn't find the gold and silver they were pulling out of the Aztec and Inca empires, so they just wrote it off, literally called it useless lands, and moved on.
All right, so let's jump ahead because things are about to change. While Spain was focused on the south, other countries, we're talking Britain and France, started planting their flags on all that useless land. And you know what that means? They were setting the stage for a massive showdown.
So by the mid-1700s, it was time to figure out who really controlled the continent. And just look at these numbers. The British colonies had this huge population advantage, over 1 million people compared to only about 60,000 in New France. Both sides made alliances with different Native American tribes, and a really brutal war kicked off.
In the end, Britain comes out on top. They get Canada and all the French land east of the Mississippi River. I mean, it's a massive victory, but it came at a staggering cost. The British Empire was now stuck with a mountain of debt. So how's Britain going to pay for all this? Well, they turn to the American colonies and start levying taxes. The colonists, who felt like they did most of the fighting anyway, were absolutely furious. This is what led to that famous phrase, no taxation without representation, and it put the colonies on a direct collision course with Great Britain. And what started as a fight over taxes just exploded into a full-blown revolution. But here's the crazy part. After winning independence, the new country almost fell apart. Its first government was a complete disaster. You had 13 states acting like they were 13 little bickering countries. They realized the whole experiment was failing, so they had to start over, writing a new constitution to create a government that could actually, govern. Okay, so with a real government in place, the United States was finally ready to grow. But its biggest expansion, it wasn't some grand thought-out plan. It was basically just a series of historical accidents and lucky breaks. Meanwhile, let's hop over to Europe, where Napoleon Bonaparte is taking over. He's just gotten the huge Louisiana territory back from Spain, but his main goal, his obsession, is conquering Britain. And as we know, wars are incredibly expensive. America, at first, just wanted to buy the city of New Orleans to make sure their trade ships could get through. But Napoleon, who was desperate for cash, and also worried the British might just take the land from him anyway, made them an offer they just could not refuse. Take the whole thing, for just $15 million. And just like that, with a single signature, the United States literally doubled in size. This deal threw the doors wide open for westward expansion, and it perfectly shows the accidental nature of all this. It wasn't conquest, it was a real estate deal that happened because of a war thousands of miles away. The next 50 years were just a blur of expansion. The U.S. got Florida from Spain, then it annexed the independent Republic of Texas, and after one really ugly war, it took a massive piece of land from Mexico, which included California. A little while later, they even bought Alaska from Russia. In just a few decades, the country stretched from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But as the country was pushing outwards, a deep, dark crack was widening right down the middle. The nation was growing, yeah, but it was growing into two totally different societies, with one fundamental conflict that just couldn't be ignored anymore. And that core issue was slavery. In the North, which was industrializing, slavery was mostly illegal and more people saw it as a moral evil. But down in the agricultural South, as you can see here, the entire economy was built on the backs of enslaved people. This wasn't some small disagreement. It was a fundamental clash over what the country was and what it was going to be. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860, running on a platform to stop the spread of slavery, the Southern states just up and left the Union. The result was the Civil War, the deadliest war in American history. The North won, slavery was finally abolished, and the collection of states was forcefully forged into a single, truly united nation.
All right, on to the final chapter of this story. The country is reunited, it's industrializing like crazy, and now America starts to look beyond its own borders and project its new power onto the world stage. The big turning point came in 1898 with the Spanish-American War. An American warship mysteriously exploded. The U.S. blamed Spain, and they went to war. It was a quick fight. The U.S. captured Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines, pretty much ending the Spanish Empire that Columbus had kicked off 400 years before. And in that very same year, the U.S. also annexed Hawaii.
And then came the new president, the powerhouse that was Theodore Roosevelt. He totally embraced America's new role in the world. He built up the U.S. Navy into a massive fleet, one of the most powerful on the planet. And he made sure the Panama Canal got built, a strategic game changer that let his new Navy zip between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The message to the world was loud and clear. America had arrived. So there you have it. We went from useless lands to a global superpower, a journey that was fueled by other empires' problems, some incredibly lucky real estate deals, and a brutal civil war that completely redefined the nation. Which leaves us with one last question to chew on. Was America's incredible rise some kind of inevitable destiny? Or was it just a remarkable, improbable, and often accidental series of events that could have easily gone a completely different way? Something to think about.